Ashley, do we have quorum?
Hey, Pernell, she's pushing the meeting live to YouTube, but you do have a quorum.
Excellent.
Just waiting for her to say that the meeting is live.
And we are streaming live now on YouTube, so I guess whenever you and Janine are ready.
Excellent. All right. Our Cuyahoga County Council Remote Committee of the Whole meeting for Wednesday, March 3rd, 2021 is now called to order. Janine, would you please call the roll?
Calling the roll, Mr. Sweeney.
Present.
Okay. Mr. Tuma. Mr. Tuma is absent at the moment. Mr. Gallagher.
Here.
Mr. Schrein.
Here.
Ms. Conwell. Ms. Conwell is absent at the moment. Ms. Brown. Ms. Brown is absent at the moment. Ms. Stevens.
Present.
Ms. Simon. Ms. Simon is absent at the moment. Ms. Brown is here. Ms. Baker.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
And Council President Jones.
Here.
There is a quorum.
Excellent. Janine, has anyone signed in for public comment?
No, Mr. President, no one has submitted any public comment. And I'd like the record to reflect that Councilman Tuma is also in attendance.
Great. All right. Okay, well, we have an ordinance here. Again, the establishment of a division of public utilities. And clerk, if you would, Janine, if you would take a moment and let's read our ordinance into the record.
Ordinance number 2021-0003, amending section 202.04 of the Cuyahoga County Code to establish a division of public utilities within the Department of Public Works.
Excellent. So at this time, I'm going to turn it right over to you, Mike. Please take it from here.
Thanks, Council President. I'm going to share my screen if I can do this. Can you see that okay?
I can.
Okay. Council President, thanks. And so with me today, this is the legislation to create a county utility. And with me today are a couple of folks who are going to help me present. One is Ali Ahmed, who is been one of our consultants working on this microgrid project with Green Strategies. And Ali is a mechanical electrical engineer who's done consulting for Fortune 500 companies. One of the smartest guys I know in terms of understanding kind of mechanics and engineering around electric grids and kind of all the interactions that go on with them. And so we've been lucky to have Ali with us for the last couple of years working on this. And also Andy Thomas, hopefully Andy is on. If not, he'll be on soon. Andy is head of the Cleveland State Energy Policy Center. And they are real, in terms of Ohio, kind of knowledge around policy and financing and economics around clean energy and electric grid knowledge. Andy really is one of the brightest guys in the state around this stuff. So Andy's been really helpful in helping us put together this both presentation and kind of the idea we're bringing to you today. So as I've talked, I think everyone at least once on this, and the idea is that we believe that as a county, we have the authority to create a county electric company. We've provided some legal opinions from the law department. We've also got an opinion from the statewide Legislative Service Commission that we can walk through later on. But so today is to kind of walk through basically our kind of how we see the county developing this kind of utility power, doing kind of an overview of microgrids, which is kind of the core of the idea of what we want to work on, what the utility would work on. Kind of go through a case and roles for the county utility, why we think this is a good thing. We've kind of looked at potential customers and the economic development value of these utility powers and microgrids. So especially Andy and CSU has done a lot of work on kind of research around this. We'll walk through how we see the organization and delivery strategy from the county. So where is this housed and how do we operate it? and then look at some of the at least initial opportunities that we've seen from talking to potential partners in the community, potential customers, and just overall opportunities. And then we'll just walk through next steps. I also want to mention that Mayor Gallagher is on the line too, or on the Zoom call, and I just asked her to be on because one of the sites we've looked at is the Old American Greeting site in Brooklyn. Sorry, and it also kind of dovetails with the large landfill solar site we've done out there that has worked out pretty well. So if anyone had any questions for a mayor who kind of has kind of seen some of the issues that not having she's had some issues with some of the grid going down and not being as productive as it should be. May have a question for Mayor Gallagher, and she may want to opine on something. Just wanted to start off with just an overview of what a microgrid is. So as I talked about, I've talked to all of you about, we're not trying to take over the entire grid of Cuyahoga County, right? So this really is about economic development opportunities and creating these distinct geographic microgrids. And the idea is that there is value to having an area where if the larger grid goes down, we're going to be able to keep a local grid up, and especially in the commercial sector. This is, and Andy will talk about this in a little bit, but just there's a lot of interest in, kind of the business community right now about making sure that their power is going to always be up. So a microgrid basically is a distinct kind of geographic area that incorporates multiple distributed generation and control technology. So it has local generation of electricity. If the larger grid goes down, we're going to be able to rely on local generation of electricity. Maybe it's through landfill solar projects, maybe it's through backup batteries, maybe it's through small, fuel cell generators. Every day I get something new in my news feed about some new device or technology that's being contemplated for local generation. But it's able to maximize reliability and operational efficiency. And basically what it can do is it can function in islanded mode, disconnected from the larger utility grid if the larger grid goes down. So
Mike, can I,
yeah.
and I'll let you give your presentation, but this one has just been sticking in my mind. What I would like clarity on is, with this, will you be providing power daily for a company, or will you only provide it in the moment that it could potentially go down?
No, it'll be both, Council President. So we will have local generation, local backup, and we will also be tied into the larger transmission grid. So we will be the power provider for the customers, basically. And under this concession agreement model that we've developed. So we will be hiring someone to develop, build, operate, finance the microgrid, who will be providing that electricity to them under our auspices on a daily basis. But so look, let's say we've got a large solar field and it's nighttime, right? You can't get electricity when solar's not working, or March and February or January, terrible months for solar. So you're going to need on a daily basis just kind of feedback or backup energy from the larger transmission grid. If the grid goes down, we'll still have backup battery generators within that microgrid and the local generation to keep those facilities up. But on a day-to-day basis, we'll still be relying on the larger transmission grid, which is it's called the PJM network that we can tap into for other power.
Okay.
Okay. And Ali or Andy, if I'm messing anything up, just make sure you jump in here. So.
We're good.
Thanks. And then, so just the case for the county utility. Look, it's we don't feel like the existing distribution utility companies in the county, they struggle to meet the changing needs of power consumers and energy developers. So we think that this is an economic development opportunity and and it increases with local capacity to provide value to in electricity beyond simple supply. So current electric companies just provide power, right? But the grid goes down, their power goes down. We're not providing resilience. They're not providing backup resiliency in the form of a protection for their customers. Their customers have to buy backup generation basically on their own. They'll have to buy a backup battery power sectors or uninterruptible power supplies, which Andy can talk about. So we think that a local utility can provide resiliency, lower or no carbon options, energy efficiency and demand response programs, and later on down the road, transportation electrification. So vehicles are more and more going to be powered by electricity rather than gas, and so the utility may be an opportunity to help out in that. So we think that this utility can be an innovation-focused, nimble distribution utility company and can provide these services and is, again, within the rights of the county to create, develop, and operate the utility. We looked at kind of what could potential roles be for the utility. So I'll walk through these real quick, but so we connect generation and customers. So as we talked about developing these microgrids, we'll be able to create local generation and also tap into the larger transmission grid to provide power to customers in the microgrid territory. We provide distribution from renewable generators to customers. So there's going to be people who are developing large landfill solar projects in the county potentially. And so it's a way for them to sell their power to customers that reside in the county. So that's connect generation and customers. We can connect generation to the grid. So we can help manage the interconnect from generators to the larger transmission grid, which simplifies and accelerates connection of new generation assets. So it could be that we're overproducing. Maybe there's a solar project that is overproducing for the need of a microgrid. We can offer that ability to sell that excess power out to the transmission grid for customers outside of the area. Third is connecting customers to the grid. So we can help manage the interconnection between the PJM grid to select customers. And I should stop here just because terms. I just want to make sure we're on the same page. PJM is the organization that manages the transmission grid between Ohio and roughly the East Coast, the Atlantic Ocean. So it's Pennsylvania, New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, West Virginia, and Ohio. Maybe a couple other states are in there too. So there's a larger transmission grid that they manage and make sure that power is flowing and coming, and they organize that. So we can help customers get into that grid. We also think that by doing that, it helps with affordability. So it provides lower total power costs by avoiding riders that the current distribution companies have. So First Energy, and Andy will talk about this a little later on, they've got a large percent of their bill is in non-bypassable riders that have to be passed on to every customer. So it's between 25 and 30% of every bill is riders that they've been able to get through the Public Utilities Commission that everyone pays. As a municipal electric company, we're not subject to PUCO oversight or those riders that come through the PUCO. And then lastly, this is other stuff, but we can provide manage other utility programs, or the utility can. So again, it can be a vehicle for participation in federal and state energy programs. And with the Biden administration, I think there really is going to be a lot of resources coming out of the Department of Energy, and they're going to be coming for upgrading grids, grid resiliency, microgrids, clean energy. So it could be a vehicle for tapping into some of those resources and programs. And again, it can help with deploying energy efficiency, transportation electrification, renewable energy, even industrial gases and programs or incentives. So it could be this vehicle for other utility programs. So this is kind of talked about this already, but we think we've got a competitive advantage as the county utility. We're not subject to FERC, which is the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, and PUC oversight, including riders. We don't have an obligation to serve all customers, is one of the things that a county utility has. It's interesting, and this is kind of an example, but the city of Toledo created a utility, electric utility, that only serves one customer. So it's a large recycling kind of manufacturing facility where they went in, bought a substation, tapped into the transmission grid, and are selling power just to that one customer and kind of managing the power flows back and forth between that customer. So Columbus kind of does something similar. Cleveland at Cleveland Public Power is similar. You don't have to serve the whole entire geography of the location where you're located at. Let's see, this can be created through county ordinance. And you, in a sense, the county council becomes kind of like the public utility commission in a sense for the public utility that's created here. It's how it works. There's about 50, 60 municipal utilities in the state of Ohio, and the way it's written is the city councils are kind of the oversight basically of the utility. So that's how we envision it would work here as well. We think we can minimize operational costs while outsourcing operations and providing lower customer pricing. So Ali especially has done a lot of kind of modeling of potentially what we can cost and what we can are not subject to because of PUCO riders. But we're not going to, especially right now, we're not an expert in running a utility, but there are really smart companies out there that know how to do this and who are interested in microgrids. You know, there's companies that have developed microgrid divisions now that are kind of ready and able and set up and who are interested in what we're doing in Cuyahoga County. So we think that we can, you know, we don't have to run this. We can offer a concession agreement to developer operators who would come in, finance, develop, operate the microgrid under our auspices. And then last, again,
Mike, I'm sorry to interrupt. Mike Gallagher. Going back to the Legislative Service Commission with the legal opinion, the Attorney General is looking at this for us right now. They have not come out with their decision. So relying on this commission, I don't know how we got that opinion unless some state legislature asked for it. So I don't think there's going to be a problem with it, but to rely on that's probably not the best thing to do. Second, if this is such a good idea and companies want to do this, why don't they just do it?
They need authority to do it. So they need a utility to work with. So Schneider Electric, right? It has good microgrid knowledge, but they can't just go do this. They have to operate under the auspices of either a public utility like First Energy / CEI, or a municipal utility like CPP, or what we're potentially establishing, which would be a county utility.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Yep. Okay, and then again, we can provide additional services beyond electricity. All right, so Andy, are you on? Just want to.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question before?
Yes, go right ahead, Mr. Councilman Sweeney, ask your question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Director Foley, can we go back to the other slide really fast? I just have a question about, thank you. Can be created through county ordinance providing local control over electricity. Can you talk a little bit more about the local control? Because you mentioned there's 15 other municipal electrics and it's all done by the city councils. And I don't know how many county have their own electric. And I'm fully supportive of this. I want to make sure this works. But the local control.
Yeah, so just Councilman, I'm sorry. But because we're a charter county, we have different powers than other counties do. So Summit County and Cuyahoga are the only two counties that have, that's right, that have charters. So when we created our charter, we gave ourselves the authority of any municipality in the county, and the state constitution gives municipalities the authority to operate their own utilities. So basically by inference and law, we have the authority to create our own county electric company. Now, if someone wants to opt out of that, right? So if there's a city or cities or, say, hey, we're not comfortable with this. We don't want to join in. We don't like the idea. We want to create our own utility. We like this idea. We want to create. Then they can say to us at the county level, hey, county, you can't operate here. So that's kind of the idea.
Perfect. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The further explanation helps me a lot because we have the control because we're local and county. And if a municipality within our county wants to opt out, they have the opportunity to with the proper notification to us.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Director.
Yep. Okay, so
Mr. President, do you want questions going through here or do you want us to wait to the end? What's your preference?
Yeah, I didn't know.
Well, I started off with a question, so we will allow you to have a few questions. If it starts to get too burdensome, we'll allow him to finish his thought, give his full presentation. But if you do have a question, just let me know and we'll let it give it.
All right, Mr. President, Mr. Foley, you said that you're going to have people signing in to buy the service. Is the power going to be at the same exact price they're paying, more or less?
Councilman Schramm, and I'll let Ali talk about this a little later on, but we think we can. So resilient electricity, we've done some studies, and Andy will talk about this in a minute. There's companies out there who will spend more on resilient electricity, on 5 nines power. We think we can sell our power at what's currently available in the commercial market. So minimally at parity. So we think it'll be minimally at parity, and we think we can even sell it for lower.
But this will be a new venture for somebody signing on because it's brand new.
Yeah.
It's never been done in the state of Ohio and never done on any county basis. So some company is going to be risking their operational success based on success of this power. Is that a fair summary?
I think so. I think, yeah. So they're signing up to be a customer of the microgrid, right? We are hiring a firm that knows how to do this, and we've got interest from some of the largest power companies in the world who are interested in doing this. As we contract out with them, I think maybe, and Councilman or Council President Jones asked this when we first met with them, liability issues. So what is the county's liability? I mean, those are going to be contractual, how we write these contracts basically, and how we write the RFP. But we believe that the liability will lie with the developer operator if something terrible were to go wrong, right? And if they didn't provide 99.99% electricity, and which is like down 5 minutes a year. So if for some reason they go down for 2 days, right, then that'll be the liability that we will shift over contractually to the operator developer of the microgrid.
And you really believe that somebody will not sue this county if this county fails to deliver on a contract? And I can see he's even smiling in the picture. So it's a ridiculous statement, Mike. You know that, and I know that. We're going to get sued if we fail. I don't care who the third party contractor is. That's
I know.
Look at all the lawsuits we got right now. So joining the line out there. Another
Councilman, well, I know but also, Councilman, people sue or the drop of a hat, right? So
absolutely. So don't assume that just because there's somebody else to sue in the line, they're going to. You always go after the big fish, and we're the big fish.
So that'll be part of the lawyering that has to go on, and which is one of the things we're going to just have to be. We're going to, especially these first tranches of microgrids. We're going to have really good lawyering going on for our contracts, and so those are expenses. There are going to be some upfront expenses, but as I think that there's some firms, especially in Cuyahoga County, who can help us out with that.
So we're hoping that they're going to sign on with this power delivery. Our track record was not very good at getting people to sign on to the wind power. At least I don't think. We never got enough people to sign on to take full consumption of the wind power. So that's still, I think, holding in a holding pattern because of that. Is that a correct statement that we still don't have we had a whole bunch of folks who eagerly told us they were going to be there when the day came, and unfortunately they did not stay true to their commitment, I don't think, did they?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that was a little bit before my time about, kind of who were going to be customers and who weren't going to be customers. So, but I mean, one of the problems with the wind turbines is it's pretty expensive power, and it's a demonstration project. And so it's selling it, they modeled this at 15 cents a kilowatt hour, which is above market, the high above market rate in terms of electricity costs. We're modeling this at, market or below market electricity.
Yeah, it was just the fact that getting people to sign up and actually staying with the commitment. And as time went on, as we got closer to actually going from concept to demonstration, that they backed out all over the place. And so anyway, I just want to make sure we are cognizant of the fact that customer promises and customer commitments are not necessarily one and the same as to when they actually start taking power.
Councilman, I take your point, and you're absolutely correct. Look, you're right. So we've got interest. We've got a lot of interest from customers, and there's a logic to it. I mean, you look at what happened in Texas last 2 weeks ago, and just the loss in value of businesses losing their ability to produce stuff. There is a heightened sense right now about having grids that are resilient and reliable. And we think we're in a position to take advantage of that.
And sadly, let's not go open that door, because sadly, we know what happened. It was freezing of the windmills because of the cold that was not fabricated into the oil and lubricants. And as a result, all that power came offline. And again, Ollie's smiling because he knows exactly.
No,
No,
Mr. Chair.
So Mike, here's what we're gonna do. Mike, we're going to continue the presentation. No questions until the end. We all have important questions. I have my own set of questions, and each councilman has their own questions as well. And they're important, and they all will get answered. But we need to get the presentation through. So no questions.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. I reserve my response to Councilman Schron.
Yes, let's wait. Mike.
Okay, thanks.
That was off grid. Thanks.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to move this. I'm going to say that wind overproduced, by the way, that what it was supposed to produce in Texas, and it was actually the natural gas plants that were unwinterized that were the much bigger problem. But we'll talk about that another time. So I'm going to move over to Andy. Andy's got some slides here. We're going to walk through just on the just kind of the market study and analysis CSU has done, and why we think there's value here, why do we think this is has resonance right now. So Andy Thomas, who's the director of the Energy Policy Center at Cleveland State.
So yes, thank you, Mike. Yeah, I've been at Cleveland State for 12 years now, directing the Energy Policy Center. Prior to that, I worked in the fuel cell industry, and then in Louisiana, I worked in the oil and gas and electricity industries there. As both an attorney and as a scientist as well. But I've been working in energy markets and microgrids and hydrogen and energy storage and just about oil and gas since then, since I came to Cleveland State. And I also am the commissioner for the oil and gas for the state of Ohio. So just for a little bit of introduction of who I am, right now, what I want to talk to you about today is about the research that we did a couple of years ago for the Cleveland Foundation related to microgrids and the hypothesis that came originally from Ron Richard at the Cleveland Foundation and Armand Budish at the county is that microgrids may provide a competitive advantage to the region if we were able to build them cost effectively because of the fact that they have reliable generation and reliable uptime. And so that was what we were charged to investigate is, first of all, was it something that was feasible? And secondly, how much would electricity cost from those systems? And then third, is there a market for that? And that's what I'm going to talk about today. But to start with, we'll talk a little bit about what's driving this change. And and I think we all know that what's going on with the economy with related to the digital economy, we call it. These are the areas of growth in the economy relate to information technology, connectivity, big data, the industrial Internet of Things. These are all the terms that we use to describe what really comes down to the need for uptime on our IT systems. In the manufacturing business, we call it the IT-OT convergence, which means it's the information technology is converging with the operational technology. And that just simply means that more and more of our systems are controlled now by computers and data rather than by humans and traditional analog strategies. And so what we're seeing is what we used to be an area that could have disruptive and interruptible sources, which is in manufacturing, is also not be able to withstand significant downtime. So we've had, according to Lawrence Livermore, we see about $100 billion a year of losses from power outages. I think we saw that in a couple of days in Texas. And so we know that these are significant, and we know that they are increasing as a result of the severe weather events that we have, and as a result of the aging grid that we have. So the challenge to us is how to solve that problem, and also to bring into this the renewable power generation that is required for us to get to carbon neutrality. And the answer to that is the microgrid. Microgrid is a strategy for how we can create this 99.999% uptime, which Mike described, and at the same time be able to integrate local generation from solar, wind, and natural gas systems. And that's sort of what we're looking at right now. And with this project, the question was asked, why aren't we doing this now? Well, you can do it now. We are doing it now, but it's only being done on campuses. And for instance, Princeton University did a microgrid on its campus, and they did not go down during Hurricane Sandy. It was the only lights that were on the Eastern Seaboard. The problem is that you really can't do it commercially in front of the meter under Ohio law and most states' laws. Under Ohio law, we are a deregulated state. The investor-owned utilities cannot build them, because if they did, they would have to get approval of the PUCO, and those costs would have to get then passed through to the ratepayers under the tariff. And of course, the PUCO is never going to approve of a couple companies in Cuyahoga County getting the costs of their microgrid passed through to all the ratepayers. So this can only be done by municipal utilities, or by rural co-ops can do it as well. But currently, we are certainly looking at doing this right now with Cleveland Public Power, but other municipal utilities are largely hampered by the long-term contracts that they entered into 15 or 20 years ago that are constraining them from being able to do this sort of work. And, this is if you're a First Energy, you can get out of these long-term contracts by going into bankruptcy, but the municipal utilities cannot do that and haven't done that. So we're looking at this disruptive change that's coming. And the disruptive change is the centrally controlled grid, which is being replaced by a distributed model. And the drivers for this is the escalating grid failures that I talked about from the severe weather events and the aging infrastructure. That's creating additional stress on the old grid. Is from falling costs of distributed generation. In particular, these have come in the form of renewable power. Solar and wind power costs are coming down, and so is hydrogen costs, by the way. Green hydrogen costs are coming down too. So we will start to see more fuel cell local generation. And then shale gas has also been a major driver of this. It has driven down the costs, long-term costs of natural gas. And natural gas, it turns out, is an extremely flexible fuel that natural gas systems can be used to ramp up and down. They can load follow, and they have enabled the renewable generation to be much more cost effective. Another is the falling costs of electricity storage. That continues to come down, and we're going to be seeing more and more of this. And we do see it already in jurisdictions where electricity is more expensive, like California, but it's coming to Ohio as well. Perhaps the most important for microgrids is the advent of smart grids and smart control systems that has enabled load following and demand response, bidirectional flow of electricity, and system optimization. And those are really all things that have made the microgrid so attractive financially. And then cybersecurity issues is another disruptive change that we're seeing happening. We all saw the report from the Trump administration when Dan Coates was Director of National Intelligence in 2018, in which he reported that the Russians had their fingers on the switch for the US power, and they could shut off US power anytime they felt like it. And in fact, they have done this. They did it in Ukraine. They shut it in 2015. These types of hacks are where the system is vulnerable to. If we could go to microgrids, we can start to island off from hackers, basically. And this is another, I think, important aspect driving the local distributed model for electricity distribution. And then finally, the part that I noted earlier, which is the digital economy. The IT systems need 100% uptime, or as close as they can possibly get to it. We know that the IT/OT convergence is driving so much of our economy right now, especially in manufacturing, that we are going to start to see these systems where the controls, the processes, devices are all controlled by computers, which in turn have to rely on information and in grid uptime. And for information technology, the principal cause of IT failure is electricity outage by a large amount. I mean, there's nothing that's remotely close to that. So Mike, can you go to the next slide? So we looked at this. We started out with trying to understand who might be interested in grid resiliency, and we did some research on this. And it's basically a number of relevant events that are where we're having losses of the grid that is driving this. And what we found was that 40% of the non-agricultural employment growth nationally is projected to be in 3 industries: healthcare, finance, and insurance, all of which are particularly vulnerable to lost load from electricity or from IT outages from electricity loss. And but it's not just the data centers and law firms and hospitals and emergency services that I think we all kind of expected might be the source of high values of lost load. But food services, high-tech manufacturing, and R&D focused companies, and now more and more manufacturing, which is reliant upon this IT/OT convergence as well. So, so the Cleveland Foundation funded our research. This was not just CSU, by the way. Case Western was part of our team in 2018, and they asked us to look at 3 things: technical feasibility of the microgrid in downtown Cleveland, the value of resiliency, and then the third was economic impact. So we did those 3 studies, and we found that it was feasible to build a microgrid, and that it could be done cost effectively. The value of resiliency, it turns out there wasn't a lot of research out there, but we have done a lot to establish that value of resiliency, and which is some of this is groundbreaking work in the United States. And it was an area that the American Academy of Sciences specifically pointed to the DOE for, that, you know, that there is not a good understanding of the value of resiliency in America. So we undertook that evaluation, and that consisted of looking at 3 ways to approach it. One was the lost production value. The second was to just ask customers what they're willing to pay, which we did through a survey. And then we did an avoided cost analysis, which is, you know, basically looked at what it is that companies who have to have 5.9 uptime now are paying to have that 5.9 uptime over and above the cost of their regular grid cost. So first of this is the lost load approach. And basically all this is that gross value added within a business sector over a period of time divided by the electricity consumption. We used Bureau of Labor research, and we used US Census Bureau data research. And this basically, these numbers just basically reflect the value that of lost production during outages. And we did these by NAICS codes. And what we found was the highest values of lost load, at least within these 3- and 4-digit NAICS codes, were the computer systems, technical consulting, insurance, finance, law, medical, and so on. These were helped us identify what industries were the ones that we should look at as possibly interested in moving into a microgrid. Next slide. So the next thing we did was we commissioned a survey that was, we developed a series of questions that we wanted to ask energy managers, procurement managers for businesses around the country. And we commissioned this nationwide survey through Qualtrics. And they came back with the results of this study. And this slide here kind of really is probably the most important slide that information that we received, which we asked them, which of the following all-in prices per kilowatt hour for electricity that included 5.9 uptime would provide a significant inducement for you to locate your business within a microgrid. And the numbers here range from 10 cents to 18 cents that we looked at here. And what we saw is that companies are not willing to pay 18 cents, but obviously they're willing to pay 10 cents and more. And the number we really focused on was the 14 cents, because that was the one that we wanted to target is, can we build a microgrid for under 14 cents a kilowatt hour? And because that number is around 25% of the respondents said that yes, they would be interested in moving into a microgrid district if there was 5.9 uptime power provided within the microgrid. And I should say, by the way, that Ohio State that has that exact model. They have, you know, they are all behind a meter, so they outsource their entire campus to ENGIE, and ENGIE has provided them with a warranty on the 5.9 availability of power for that system. And I don't know what their exact price is for it, but I know it's a lot lower than 14 cents per kilowatt hour that they're paying for that. So, so this, using that slide, we went on to look at the avoided cost approach, which is the next approach. And by the way, I should also mention that we also conferred with data centers in the city of Cleveland. And the numbers that they gave us for their all-in cost for electricity is around 15 cents a kilowatt hour. And so that was a confirmation that that 14 cents and below was the target area we wanted to go to. So the avoided cost approach is another important way that we looked at this. And what this is we basically stopped to say, all right, so companies who are currently having to buy and build their own backup systems and uninterruptible power supply systems, what are they paying for that? And the way we did this is we looked at data centers, and particularly we looked at Experion and its cost calculators for what it costs for them to move from what we would call 3.9 uptime, 99.9%, which is the average for CEI territory right now, and that's about 8 hours a year outage, to 99.999% time. And what we found is that the price ranged from around 5 to 20 cents per kilowatt hour for that marginal cost for data centers to be able to get that extra uptime that they needed to for their systems. And in this particular model here, we showed it at about 5.3 cents. Now, I should also note, though, that 99.93% is not the real uptime within the CEI territory, because the utilities don't have to report major outages. So they don't include within that like the sort of outage we had a few weeks ago in Ohio and Cleveland, and at least where I live, we lost electricity for a couple of days with that snowstorm we had. I guess it might have been in December we had it, but but at any event, this is only the day-to-day outages. So they don't include in this the brownouts, which are voltage sags, and they don't include in this number, that 99.93% number, they don't include in that the major outages either. So, the value is actually much higher, but we're trying to be somewhat conservative here, and that's how we came up with this number. So the average commercial rate in Cuyahoga County right now is between 10 and 12 cents per kilowatt hour, and that's assuming that they have a secondary system, that they don't have sub-transmission level electricity. Cleveland State, we have sub-transmission level. We have our own substation basically, and we get our electricity for around 7 cents a kilowatt hour. But the typical commercial user gets it for around 10 to 12 cents. And so the question is can we get to within a price range that was competitive with that? And the answer is that we felt that we could meet this price with clean, resilient power, microgrid power in that range through the RFI that we sent out into the community, and the RFQ that we sent out also into the community to find out how these microgrid systems could get built and what it would cost for the end users. Based on those responses, and the responses came from the likes of Siemens and Schneider Electric and Eaton and some of the other companies that are in this business, that were able to come up with that number. So the bottom line from that is that the differential in marginal value is between 5 and 20 cents per kilowatt hour, probably a lot closer to 5 in the minds of most of the end users. So the next thing we did was we wanted to look at the economic impact of the microgrids in downtown Cleveland, and obviously economic impact studies are highly speculative, and we realized that, and so we tried to be as conservative as we could, while still trying to accurately show the story that could happen here. But our conservative approach is, to begin with, we only looked at direct jobs. We did not look at induced or indirect jobs. So there's no multipliers in here. This is direct jobs only. We use census data, Bureau of Labor Statistics data for employment trends. We assumed that the system would attract industries with the highest values of lost load, and that was the industries I showed you before. Healthcare, insurance, and financial being the three highest. And then we next assumed that only 20% of the microgrid would be available, that in order to get this microgrid built, we would have to sell 80% of the power in advance to existing end users. And that would leave 20% of it to be able to be used for attracting new businesses. And then based upon that, we looked at what the average electricity used per worker would be within that district and within that, the area that we're looking at. And then we used the zip codes within the microgrid area to project to look at what the growth had been in those areas in the last 10 years and compared those to what the growth was nationally on average. And we found that, I'm sure you're not surprised to hear that, Cleveland is well below the national average growth in those three areas that we looked at. So what we did is we calculated the number of jobs that would be created by this based upon those restrictions that we did. And then we subtracted out the counterfactual, which is the amount of growth we would have over the next 6 years if we did nothing. And based upon that, we calculated that roughly 1,000 new jobs would be created within 5 years in the three highest VOLL sectors. And turns out that those VOLL sectors are also the areas that have the fastest growth in job creation in America. So that somewhat inflated it, and then we used the average salaries, which also turn out to be higher within those areas than in other areas. But that's kind of the point of these microgrids, is that we want to attract industries that are in the fastest growing and the best paying areas. And that's what we believe would happen if we were offering this sort of uptime associated with the microgrid. And as the councilmen have noted already, it has to be from a source that they trust. So, this is why we went through the qualification process to select out these 8 companies that were 5 of which I think were Fortune 500 companies. And the other ones are all well known. And based upon this analysis, we projected about 1,000 jobs in that district and earnings of about 91 million by 2026. And that was if we started in 2022 on the project. So that's kind of the results of the studies that we did at Cleveland State to look at the economic impact and the opportunity of developing microgrids.
Okay. Thank you, Mr.
Keep going.
Are you continuing? Yes, please.
Yeah,
continue.
we got maybe 9 more slides, and we'll try to get through them quickly. I'm sorry.
Okay.
So just organizationally, we want to just kind of walk through how we want to do this organizationally within the county. Again, this would be under the auspices of the Public Works Department. The budgeting, we talked about, do we want to set something up separate from, county government, its own agency, and we thought that probably wasn't the right thing to do. So we do it within the confines of the Public Works Department, within the existing budgetary process. When we do projects, we'll do RFPs for developer operators, financiers for either individual or groups of projects. And those RFPs will come back to county council for approval, right? So nothing happens without the county approval oversight. In the long term, we think that there's going to be a need for an administrator within the Public Works Department. Because we're doing this in a way that is, with a kind of a concessionaire model, that a lot of it will be kind of oversight, and there'll be some regulatory requirements that we'll have to do. Be talking to communities. It'll be looking for new projects, but we think the administrative and contract support that we've already got will help with. We've already got some Public Works knows how to do a lot of this in terms of RFPing and the kind of procurement stuff. So while we'll have some work to do, most of this work will be done by the concessionaires, developers, and we'll be doing most of the work. We're going to need some consultants, and we're going to need some legal work as well. So Andy and Ali have really helped us to get to this point. And as we develop these kind of new projects out in different areas of the county, there's going to be, assistance needed in defining, technologies and one-line diagrams and kind of engineering support that we're going to need. We put together a preliminary budget, and this is both kind of costs that we think we're going to have at least for the next couple of years, and then revenues over both short-term and longer period of time. We think that, for 2021, at least within current county staff to get these RFPs up and off the ground, we think we can do that with both current county staff and help with Andy Ali, what am I talking about? Consultants, I'm sorry. And then, probably at the end of the year, we're going to need some assistance. We're going to start needing work with some of the legal work. In 2022, we envision once we get kind of hired a concessionaire developer, then at that point, we would look to hire an administrator. But again, sustainability, economic development staff, public works staff, law department would all be part and parcel of helping to keep things going. In terms of revenue, so we're looking at this as look, we want to develop these microgrids because we think it's good in and of itself, but we also want to recover our expenses where we can do that. So there would be, as we sell power, the agreement with the developer is that there will be a penny and a half that will come back to the county, both to cover our costs, for administrative costs, for pre-development costs, but also at the end of the day to look to develop this sustainable economic development fee to help with future projects and across the county. So it both covers our costs and helps with revenue for other projects. So we tried to divide this up in between what is the difference between the county activities and the developer activities. On the design and planning side, the county would help identify our opportunities and customers. We'd obtain letters of interest. We would issue the RFPs. We would select the developers and finalize concession agreements. The developers would respond to the RFPs, accept concession agreements, and then finalize project scope and customer rate. On the implementation side, we would work on supporting the developer with access, rights of ways, licenses, permits, customer conversations, and finalize the customer agreements. The developer would work to fund, construct, and commission the projects, establish customer service and billing functions on behalf of the county. And then ongoing operations, we would look to provide developer oversight and ensure compliance with county and regulatory rules and identify future projects. And then the developer would operate and maintain the microgrids, procure excess power from the PJM market, and provide customer relationship management. And Ali, and so I just, and we got a couple more slides, and I know this is getting long, but Ali, if you can walk through this, Ali really has been kind of really helpful in both kind of diving deep into just kind of the model of how this could be created. He gets electricity and kind of project development as well as anybody I know. So Ali, I'll turn this over to you.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks everybody on the council for your time today. As we mentioned earlier, there is no requirement for the county utility to service all customers. So we have to look at each individual opportunity, whether it meets certain criteria and whether it makes sense for the county utility to participate in that opportunity. And we've got kind of four high-level filters that we would look at. Obviously, one is making sure that it was regulatorily feasible. We talked a little bit earlier about the potential for cities to exercise their own franchise, and so that's something that has to be looked at. We of course have the techno-economic feasibility. So is the project technically feasible? Will the electrons go where we want them to go? And then does the project provide economic benefits really in three buckets? It has to provide it for the county. It has to provide it for the developer who needs to recoup and make their profit margins. And then it has to provide it for the customer. And then the other two impacts are also very important because we are looking at this from, what does CCU, what does this county utility do for the community at large? So does it have an economic development impact in its ability to grow, add, increase existing companies' development and jobs in the county? And then also, does it have an environmental impact? Is it increasing renewable energy or low carbon energy onto the grid and reducing pollution? I'm going to try to move fast. I know we're really cut for time. So what you're looking at is a number of different opportunities that we've seen, and this kind of ties back again to an earlier slide. One big area that we're seeing is the ability to convert landfills and potential land bank land to solar farms, to couple them with battery technology and then service nearby customers. We also see working with individual businesses who have a need for resilient or cleaner energy sources, working with residents. And I believe one of the letters of support that we have is from a resident-driven community solar project. And then collaborating with cities. We are still in conversations with Cleveland and Cleveland Public Power on the potential for the downtown microgrid, and how the county and city can work together on that one. And there may be opportunities with other cities that have specific needs, like what we're seeing in Brooklyn. I'm not going to go through this slide, but we do have a very technical, detailed process that we're looking at to evaluate opportunities, particularly when it comes to landfill solar. We really are trying to be data driven in terms of where really three things exist: where we have the potential to build that solar generation, where we have potential customers to take that power, and where we have an interconnection to the larger grid to provide the power that we need for the excess. So one example, we've got two examples in here, and these are still very preliminarily modeled, but we are looking out in the air zone. So there are three office buildings to the southwest of NASA on the west side. You can see a little bit of the runway there from the airport. These buildings are owned by Kelm Properties. They do have kind of the customer bases that Andy was speaking to earlier. So very reliant on technology. Obviously, being in the air zone, there's a focus on high-tech industries, very computer-intensive businesses. So we believe that there's an opportunity there by providing on-site solar at those three buildings, again, potentially coupled with a small battery system to help ride through short outages, and then being able to connect through the substation, which is actually owned by NASA and has a direct connection to the PJM grid. Again, our modeling there shows that from a developer point of view, and when we talk about our feasibility, we take a look of the developer, the concessionaire, that the developer would make a positive net present value and have a reasonable internal rate of return, provide the customer savings of about a penny a kilowatt hour, and still be able to provide the county's penny as well. And this is a pretty small project, so the capital investment is actually relatively minor. So it's a good project maybe to kick off and get our feet wet with. A second project that's obviously garnered a lot of interest because of the tie-in with Sherwin-Williams and their new R&D center is looking at a landfill in Broadview Heights. It's quite a large landfill. You can see it up in the northern part of this map here. But the ability to put solar, potentially battery on that landfill, connect to nearby customers, a few of whom we've had very positive conversations with, connect to a relatively nearby substation onto the PJM grid, less than 2 miles away, and then also then connect to the Sherwin-Williams R&D site, either providing them power from the utility plus the solar, as well as evaluating additional potential on-site production opportunities on their site. So still in the very early days, as you know, they're just starting to talk about their approximate designs for that facility size and demand. But again, we believe that we could come out with a more resilient power source for them, a greener power source for Sherwin-Williams and the local community. And again, at a target rate here of 11 cents a kilowatt hour, which would be paid for in part from Sherwin-Williams' perspective by the fact that they would not need to install as much backup equipment for a number of their processes that would require resilient power. Mike, you want to take this one back again?
Sure. Okay. And yep, just a couple more slides. So just other opportunities we've talked to. So there's a couple other buildings or properties in the air zone who are interested in this. the Huff BC, it's this, I love this project. It's a group of African-American homeowners in the Huff community who kind of formed their own development corporation and want to do community solar, and they've identified potential land and off-takers for power. So it could be an opportunity that the county microgrid can work with them, and they've written a letter of support that we sent to you. Brooklyn, Mayor Gallagher's on the line, but the One American Way site, which used to be the Old American Greeting site, there's it's been kind of the large facility has been kind of condoed out, and there's we've had a couple of discussions with the owner, and they are potentially interested in being a customer. Cleveland Foundation, the Innovation District, Innovation Zone over in the East 60s, and met with their developer for that project, which is the Wexford developer. So this is kind of their high spot, I guess, or a sweet spot, is looking for innovative companies to come in and move into a district, and who we think would value the resilient electricity. Got the downtown Cleveland microgrid district. We're still working with Cleveland. It's kind of been slowed over the last year. They've had a lot of other kind of things they've had to deal with, but we've met with them again. We kickstarted the conversation back up with them again last Friday, and I'm hopeful we're gonna develop something there. And then Nestle and Solon. The Nestle, which is a letter that we sent to you, has real interest in both. They've got a lot of interesting manufacturing going on there, but they're also interested in locally procured clean energy. So they're interested. And then lastly, it's just, again, I just want to say that with there's going to be an emphasis from the federal government, from the Department of Energy and federal infrastructure projects and electric vehicles. So county utility offers us a vehicle to help potentially download some of those resources from the federal government. So last slide. So next steps, it was just, we're continue through the county approval process. Hopefully we are able to convince you that this is a valuable thing and that it's something that the county should do. We would start finalizing first set of projects in second quarter of this year, develop RFPs and hopefully issue RFPs by fall, and make some decisions on a developer by the end of the year, early 2022, for the first set of projects. Okay, and with that, Council President, sorry for the long presentation, but this is something we've been working and thinking a lot about, and so we've done a lot of work on, and hopefully that it shows. But we're more than willing to take questions, obviously.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mike. Thank you to everyone for presenting. I'll start off with one question. We certainly want to obviously improve the economic competitiveness of this county. That we all have that mandate. But my question is, you presented to me earlier, Mike, and that there was interest from the business community. And at that time, it was rooted in I don't know if it was an RFQ or some qualifying process where there was interest, but it was rooted in the city of Cleveland's CPP being a part of the deal. Do you have any intentions of having those similar outreaches, but now not using Cleveland, but on the strength of the county who is new to this industry? Is that needed? What can you say to the interest level without Cleveland being a partner?
Yeah, so Councilman, these microgrids are kind of, geographic specific. We worked with Cleveland, and we still are working with Cleveland on this microgrid district downtown. And we just had a meeting with them again last Friday, and hopefully, as I said, we've kickstarted this process with them. They really have had some major distractions over the last year outside of coronavirus, and so I think they're starting to get back engaged in discussions with us around the downtown Cleveland microgrid. So we have letters of interest. We had letters of interest from like Sherwin-Williams, from Key Bank, from Huntington Bank, who are not CPP customers now, but who are interested in the downtown Cleveland microgrid. Those were part of the submissions that they gave us for when we submitted the RFP process. We've got an RFP drafted, And we're still working through some of the details, and hopefully we'll be able to do that RFP with Cleveland sometime soon. But
Mike, I'm sorry, continue. Please continue.
We had our process was we issued an RFQ, request for qualifications first. We got 8, we pre-qualified 8 developers, and I think Ali or Andy mentioned, some of them, 4 or 5 of them were Fortune 500 companies, some of the biggest energy companies in the world, who were all interested in bidding on this process, where they would bring their own money, build out the microgrid, and then sell power to off-takers. So we had both interest from local customers. We had interest from the larger, the developers who do this stuff for a living, who thought this is a great idea. And as Andy said, there's this, we think that there is a, places in Texas, places in California that really need electricity right now that are going to be looking towards us.
So Mike, my question is still there. And you mentioned that qualifying process, and I heard Andy and the 8 companies that he referenced, but was that with the city, with CPP as the municipality?
Yes.
What I want to know is, what is the trust factor in Cuyahoga County, who CPP has a track record, qualify it as you want, but they have a track record. And that attraction from those 8 companies was based on CPP. What interest level do you know that is there when the city of Cleveland is not involved, but it would be the county going alone? Have you gauged that level of interest yet?
Yeah.
By the business community.
I'm sorry. So, Council President, I apologize. So we do have interest. So some of the same developers who were interested in the downtown Cleveland microgrid have expressed interest in doing this countywide, or for our county microgrids also. So we've got, so there was an article that came out last week when the legislation was first introduced. It was a kind of a paper of record called Microgrid Knowledge. And so it was mentioned in there. And I got 3 or 4 calls right away from developers who had bid on the first Cleveland projects who said, hey, we like what you guys are thinking about doing, and we're interested in it.
Okay. All right. At this time, let me open it up to my colleagues. Do we have any questions?
Mr. President.
Councilman Schron. Oh, Councilman Toomer.
Thank you, Mr. President. I apologize to Mr. Schron for that. Mike, question for you on this. As far as public works involvement with the county, what has Mr. Devers' department involvement been with this? Because obviously they're going to be a component of this in some mechanical form. So either Mr. Dever could speak to that, or you could.
Hi, good afternoon, council members. Sure, yeah, I've been in discussions with Mike Foley's team probably for the last 6 months or so on this. So it seemed like this is the logical house for if we're going to stand up this utility position. As many of you know, we basically maintain sanitary sewer utility for 40 communities in Cuyahoga County as it is right now. We have some experience. We have people within the department, and Mike has brought this up already, about the procurement aspects. The internal team basically is in place already. We do not have an expert in regards to or a utility like this. And that's where Mike had made reference to it. An administrative position would have to be brought on at a later time. But internally, I think we have the administrative team in place, with the exception of that key administrator. And once the RFP is put out on the street and a developer is identified, I think at that time would probably make sense to bring on the administrator.
Okay, and then so Mr. Dever, then you find this project to be a worthwhile project and something that you guys will not be excessively taken away from other duties?
No, I don't foresee it like that. Once we start the initial process of bringing on doing the RFP. If there is some purchasing and other pieces like that that need to be done within my team, it's much like the law department may be called upon at times to provide some type of legal assistance on it, as is other departments, HR, whatever it may be. So I think internally, I think I have, the appropriate staff in place. Once again, with the exception of that administrator that has expertise, obviously, in this type of utility.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Jones, if I could just have a follow-up.
Right ahead.
I understand there's a lot of people who probably have questions and it's getting late. Mr. Foley, with respect to, you indicated that there's an area for this grid that is, that we're capable of using. In the future, do you foresee that grid expanding, or the area, the potential to expand in Cuyahoga County, or are we kind of limited to a particular area for a particular reason?
Yeah, no, look, we're looking at commercial districts, manufacturing districts, industrial districts up front, and where there's kind of this nexus, we want to be next to where we can do local generation. So maybe closed and capped landfills, which we have a number of in the county, and also access to the transmission grid. So that's kind of the raw material you need right up front. And so we've looked at kind of those first 3 or 4 projects, Arizona, Sherwin-Williams, Brecksville, the location in Brooklyn, just because we've had some interest from off-takers or customers there. So and we know that there's local generation possibilities and transmission grid possibilities, but there could be lots of other places in the county that
have most of the participants been approached by the county, or have they heard about this and approached you guys?
No, we've gone and met with the Arizona folks. We've met with their Sherwin when the Sherwin, and I'll let Ted talk about this if he wants to, but Sherwin-Williams, when there was the discussions about Sherwin-Williams staying or not, I think one of the things that was potential selling point for them was access to the microgrid.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you.
And Mayor Gallagher, I don't know if you want to jump in about Brooklyn, but
Any other questions from my colleagues?
I think Mr. Foley asked Mayor Gallagher if she was interested in speaking, Mr. President. I don't think she heard.
If there are any specific questions for me, I mean, I think I'm in the same boat of all of you. Is when we're doing this as a public service, when we have issues with anything with businesses, the first people they call are us to complain. I've had a number of issues out here in Brooklyn related to electricity going down, and not only One American Way, but all down Tiedemann Road, whether it's Tap Packaging, Sunveo, Key Bank. It's happened multiple times. It came to a head this year because of the amount that it happened. And, we started exploring what could we do as a city to help it. I mean, our job is to assist these businesses, and we're vitally dependent on this particular property continuing to grow. We'll never get as much money as we did from American Greetings headquarters there, but we're reliant on the expansion. And so when you have companies like TRG Multimedia, who are dependent to do their commercials and their graphics all the time, and they need this electricity, and it goes down for hours or days at a time. We are in a position where they're losing money, which we're losing money, and it's impacting us all. I know there's one event this past year where First Energy reached out to the customers and said, hey, we're going to go down. We have to fix something. All of the companies obviously were like, yes, of course, you have to do what you have to do. But then it never happened. So they sent all of their employees down. We're talking thousands of employees because this was multiple businesses. They sent all of their employees home, and it never happened. The power never went out that day. So all of the employees are home. And then the next day they call, the power was down. They're like, oh, sorry, wrong day. And the power was down the entire next day. And you had these companies like Tap Packaging who had contracts. They were doing packaging for personal protective gear for these companies and fast and trying to get these contracts out. So they defaulted on these contracts. TRG had these commercials due for these large companies like Sherman-Williams. And, you know, this impacts them and their bottom line already in a terrible year with COVID. Fortunately, Key Bank employees were home. So I didn't get a call from Key Bank, but all these other businesses, and, you know, we're all understanding, residents are understanding these things happen. But when you're really trying to get companies and do the best and provide services for them, this is one of these components that they're looking for. And I would say one more thing, you know, when we were on a follow-up call with First Energy, I was thinking, you know, can we use TIF money to bury lines? Would that make it more reliable? The fact is they told me no. The reliability remains the same whether these lines are buried or they're in the, you know, in the air, exposed to the weather. So having the opportunity like this, I think, for economic development in our county is a really good option.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Miller, if you have your question.
Yes, to Director Foley, first of all, thanks for the presentation, and it certainly creates the prospect of a very flexible tool that could create a lot of different kinds of economic development opportunities. And I would just like if you could kind of give me a list of the different kind of projects that would be the main ones you're looking at. I know that microgrid districts would be one, and landfill solar would be a second, and what other kind of projects would be likely?
So, Councilman, I think those are going to be the first set of projects and putting those together, right? And so around commercial microgrids will be the first set of projects. Yeah, but the tool is, as you say, it's a tool, it's a vehicle for other potential projects. So, you know, maybe it's, as we talked about, vehicles are going to be electrified. You know, GM is going to all electric vehicles by 2030. You know, all the manufacturers are going to go to electric vehicles in the future. So maybe there's a way that we could use the county electric company to help with charging station facilities. There's streetlights. All the cities have contracts for streetlights out in their communities right now, and those are pretty expensive contracts. And so maybe there's a way that the county electric company can play or assist with cities in their streetlight costs. You know, this block club in Huff is well, we're not talking about residential stuff yet. This idea of solar gardens or community solar is something that resonates, and it works in other states. So maybe there's a way that the county electric company can help with where you've got a set defined solar community solar group where they've already got customers and they've got local generation. Maybe the county electric company can help out with community solar. So there's projects like that I think that. Well, it's not the first set of stuff by any stretch of the imagination. I think it's the real economic development around commercial microgrids is going to be the first tranches of projects. That the vehicle itself allows us to do other things later on down the road, if you guys agreed that we should be doing that.
Thank you very much, Director and Mr. Chairman.
Are there any other questions?
I do.
Councilwoman?
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank Director Foley and your team and Director Dever for all of your work on this. It's innovative, it's future, it's important not only to businesses, economic development, but to address climate change and to provide future progressive jobs that we're getting away from natural resource jobs and shifting into a place where we can really boon our economy. But I want to talk a minute, and I'll circle back to this about Texas. You know, there's this line that somehow it was renewable energy that caused this breakdown, but what happened was a storm dumped snow across the South and Midwest and taking power production offline, and the pipeline freezing impeded the flow of natural gas and crude oil. The vast majority of blackouts stemmed from natural gas production, and only about 10% of the energy production was solar. And the problem was just, they didn't address the climate shifts that science has been predicting forever, the climate change that was deregulated. There were no protections, and everything just froze up. And one of the things we learned from Texas, I think what we're going to learn more, I'm not a scientist, so maybe somebody who's here can speak to this, is the grid, you know, the renewable energy grid, its level of storage would have been really important to help consistency when something like this happens. So when we're looking at our grid, potentially, are we going to have a storage ability to address any kind of you know, storm or freezing? A, are we going to have a decent level of storage? And B, are we going to have the protection against freezing pipes and whatever we're going to need in a storm?
Ali,
So it's twofold.
Yeah, Ali, you want to jump in on that one?
Yeah, so I think what we're seeing is a massive shift in what's needed from an electric utility infrastructure. And there has not been, over many, many decades, particularly in the United States, significant electrical infrastructure investment. So one of the interesting things about creating a county utility is it allows us to do separate investment in utility infrastructure that will bring in modern technologies and allow us to just inherently create a more resilient grid for things like weather conditions. I think the short answer to your question about storage is yes. We contemplate storage as one of the primary drivers for providing the high levels of uptime, whether it's a smaller battery storage system to help bridge to another power source like a generator, like a natural gas fired generator or natural gas fired fuel cell. And we can also look at dispersing those in different parts of the microgrid. So not just maybe centrally located wherever the solar panel may be, but also actually a smaller battery system at the individual customer site. And the technology that Mike talked about in the kind of the early slides we introduced microgrid is the technology to be able to control all of these disparate elements is what's really new. And the cost of that technology and the ease of implementation of that technology has come down. And that's why we're able to look at an economic system like this.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Chair, Nan Baker.
Councilwoman.
So it seems that if I heard you correctly, facilities like hospitals, financial institutions, maybe even safety with fire and police departments, they right now have their own backup generators. They have their own source of protection when the electricity goes out because lives depend on it. Hospitals have people there that depend on them having a backup system. And I'm sure our financial institutions, banks, and data centers all have that same dependency along with fire departments and police departments. So can we assure them, and would they be as assured that what they have is equal to or what we have is better than what they have, in making sure that when we do lose power, that those hospitals have what they need?
Do you want to take that one as well, Mike?
Yeah.
So actually, it's interesting timing. The first test of a microgrid supplying emergency power to a hospital is actually occurring right now in California. I think the utilities, it's either Southern Cal Edison or PG&E. Right now, by law, the facilities that you mentioned have to have on-site power, and 99% of the time that is supplied through diesel generation. And there's a lot of reasons for that, because obviously natural gas pipelines could go down and things like that. So there's really kind of two aspects for those kinds of facilities wanting to get higher levels of resiliency from their utility company versus having to rely on their own assets. Even if they don't replace those assets or abandon those assets. One is the operational cost of those assets. Running a diesel generator is 2 to 3 times more expensive than your grid power. right? So if they can ride through outages for a period of time without needing to turn on their diesel generator, that's actually a cost savings for them. The kind of second aspect to think about there too is a belt and suspenders kind of approach. And I actually have some conversations to my friends who run data centers in Texas right now. Sometimes the generators do not turn on. There's a lot of maintenance associated with these on-site systems. So being able to provide higher resiliency from the grid and still having that on-site generation just provides them a level of uptime that's even higher than what they have now. We call it N+2 instead of N+1 resiliency in their generating systems. So there might be value for those kinds of customers. They aren't necessarily the initial target customers for the microgrids that we're looking at right now, but they could also see value and could want to join into a microgrid to kind of have that more robust approach.
Okay, thank you. So just as a follow-up then, we're not saying that for those that are absolutely in need of making sure that their power doesn't go down, that this would be something where they would have an additional source, that they'll probably keep what they have and maintain it, but perhaps use the county utility as the next source before they use their own. Is that?
Correct. Correct.
Okay. And that would be driven by money. They would be doing that primarily because
it would be economical for them. Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Mr. Ahmed, the type of companies that we would target, Mayor Gallagher gave a powerful illustration of a TRG company who lost power. Is that the type of company we would be looking to target?
Yeah, I think, and Andy Thomas's presentation as well, we actually did go through a large number of companies, but you can think about kind of two kinds of companies that are really highly dependent on having electrical power. One is where you have labor intense companies, particularly where they're using technology. So Mayor Gallagher's examples, in terms of a studio, a production studio, or an IT center, or and not just a data center, but an IT center where you have a lot of computer programmers who may be working in programming. And so the power goes out and they're gone. You can also think about law offices, billable hours, right? If the power's out and they're not writing briefs, they're not billing hours. The other type, I think, is more like the packaging that she discussed. And we see a lot of industries there that are dependent, again, not just on the reliability of the power, but the quality of the power. One being a really good growth industry right now in additive manufacturing, which when you lose power in an additive manufacturing facility, you not only have the lost time, you likely have work in process that you need to throw away and restart. So there's some manufacturing type facilities as well that would benefit from higher resiliency power. Sure, okay. We mentioned Nestle as well. They do a lot of frozen foods. They lose power for an extended period of time. Things don't stay frozen. So,
would you also consider small businesses? Is that too small, or how small would you offer service to?
I believe in the downtown microgrid, when we were working through initially, there were a number of extremely small companies. I think one was in the data analytics space, and they just had to have such a high demand for resiliency in their power that they were willing to participate. I think they were under 50 employees, right, Mike?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. They did cool stuff. I remember the analytics stuff they did was pretty high end. So,
yeah, that's right.
So the companies that would potentially enter into a concession agreement, can you give us a sense of what that industry is out there, the size, how many companies, and has there been any initial contact with any companies regarding a concession agreement?
Well, through our work with the Cleveland project, we had those 8 developers, companies who were interested in being the concessionaire for the downtown microgrid. And again, they're really, some of the largest energy companies in the world who wanted to bid on the project, basically, bringing their own money, bringing their own engineering, bringing their own build out. So they were interested in doing this. And again, last week when that article came out with Microgrid Knowledge, I got calls again and emails again saying, "Hey, yeah, we're still interested in this stuff."
Any further questions?
Just one, Chair, if you don't mind, Nan Baker.
Go right ahead, Councilwoman.
So I know you've mentioned many of the horrific weather conditions that we've had where it will be down for days or weeks at a time. In this area, we're talking about Cuyahoga County. When did we have such weather swings where we were down for days or weeks, where these companies would think that there is such an urgent need that they would need to have backup? And as I said, the hospitals and financial institutions and safety, they have their own backup, which they can't afford even a couple hours. But where do you find that businesses are saying that they are down for days and weeks? And I did hear the mayor, and I understand that, and that is a particular example. But I can't really say that in the environment that I'm in or the area that it might flicker a little bit. Maybe in a bad storm, we might lose it for an hour, but I can't say we've gone on for days where we've needed generators and people are lost all their food and in the winter there. Where is it that in Cuyahoga County, not in other states or areas, but here, do you have examples of these swings being so difficult that we need to have this type of need, and that these companies are going to line up because they're fearful of the next time we lose a week of power?
I don't know if Andy, you want to take this one, or
Well,
we were talking about this a couple of weeks ago. So
yeah, but it happened. I live in Moreland Hills, and it happened to me a month ago or whenever we had that storm.
How long did you lose your power?
It was like about a day we lost it. It doesn't happen that often. You're right that it's actually a feat of quite an achievement that CEI is able to deliver 99.9% power to us. It's pretty remarkable, but these companies are not capable of handling even 8 hours a year, let alone 32 hours a year, which is the kind of thing we were talking about with these major weather events. So it's more common than you think when these happen. But I think these companies prefer to, they want to be up because they lose money when they're not up, and they're, at least the study we did shows that they're willing to pay for it. And I would throw in also that those companies that have existing systems are then able to sell those systems into the grid as demand response, and they can then monetize systems that they have. So it's not, I wouldn't say that the companies that have already existing systems would not want to participate in this. I think they would, and they would then try to monetize or expect to monetize some of the demand response capabilities they have with their backup systems.
So can I just add quickly too? I mean, I think perhaps the event similar to Texas that we felt here in Ohio was the 2003 outage. Right? I mean, that was a significant outage, multiple days, taking out significant ports of multiple states' power systems. And it's a little bit of a hard thing to prove, but there is outage tracking. I just pulled up the outage tracker for Cuyahoga County right now. There are 242 customers right now in Cuyahoga County without power. And a couple of them won't be restored until after 6 p.m. tonight. So for residential, that may not be a big deal. If one of those 250 people is a business, they may have lost half a day today. And depending on the type of business, they may have lost manufacturing or a contract or something like that. So you are correct, and that's why we didn't want to do it. It's not about everybody getting resilient power, but I think there are certain customers where even a small probability event has such a big impact that they're willing to pay to ensure that doesn't happen.
I'll tell you from a Brooklyn perspective, I did have residents without power 4 to 5 days this year. It didn't happen to the businesses. So if you're going to talk about a business perspective, the frustration at the One American Way was it happened 4 or 5 times for a couple hours during the business day. So within a 6-month span, 4 or 5 times, a few hours here or there, it just stops production for everything. I think that that's where they felt the frustration the most. Again, a lot of people are trying to be sympathetic, and no utility is perfect and they can't, guarantee, but when there's that much interruption, that many times in a 6-month period, that's where a lot of the companies came calling.
Okay, well, thank you. I appreciate that. I just, I know it's an interruption. I've been through our own business in interruptions, and it is a nuisance, but I just wondered if the nuisance qualified enough for someone to make that move, to think that they're vulnerable because of the weather swings that we have out here in our area. That was just my question.
President?
Else, Councilman Sharon?
Yeah. And following Ms. Baker's questions there about how many of the data centers right now do you believe already have their own systems they're operating right now for backup? Because I'm sure like Blue Bridge down, I'm sure they have to have it. They're operating a data center in places like that. So they've already invested in that capital right now.
They all have it.
Would you say is a, pardon?
They all have it.
They all have it. So every one of those customers are probably not, as you indicated, I think they're not your sweet spot for this product. Is that would be correct?
I mean, I think they would be interested in joining it just because, first of all, those UPS systems only last for about 5 years, and you have to replace them all. And that's a major capital expense. So I think they would be interested in fact, they've told us that they're interested in this idea. But they also have an interest in monetizing their backup capability. You can't just turn on a diesel and sell that into demand response, but you can sell battery backup into demand response. And so I think their interest is on 2 levels. One is that that those systems these are not 20-year systems. These are 5 to 7-year systems typically that they have. And then secondly, they would like to be able to sell power into the grid during demand response and maybe even peak generation times, which would be, really potentially valuable for them to do that.
So their desire is to make money on what they've already invested money in. Is that
yeah, if they can, that's right.
Yeah, so their desire is for the taxpayers to help support in some degree them to be able to monetize what you just indicated, and that's okay. I don't have a problem with people making money on a business venture. That's now Sherwin-Williams is one of the target areas. Have they already in their forecasted building already built in an uninterrupted power source? I would assume they have in their R&D labs. Has that already been something that they already have in their capital plan?
Yeah, Ali, do you want to jump on this? We've been going back and forth with them. They've asked for technical kind of requirements for the microgrid. So I don't know if Ali, you can answer that better.
I mean, I don't think they finalized that. I think probably draft 0 of their plan, they in kind of the high level initial design, they probably have included some of those pieces of equipment and some of those layers. So one of the things that we've been doing is trying to engage with customers that are building significant properties early, because it can impact the design and enable them to reduce their capital expense in the construction of the facility and shift that to paying the county utility for more resilient power. I don't think we have enough details though to answer your question specifically, but we have tried to approach them, and they have been receptive to talking to us about that pre-finalizing their design.
Okay, so there's, in theory, there's money probably on the table that they could actually help fund this project with, if it's going to get diverted from an internal expense versus an external expense to, if they get that. So is that something that they have said that they'd be willing to move it from one side of the ledger to the other?
I don't think we have a definitive response. I think they did provide us a letter of support to continue to investigate, but.
Oh, sure. Yeah, just like the other folks, they'd be happy for somebody else to pick up their cost but they have to have.
But Councilman, you're right. I mean, if they can get out of the capital expense and put this in, or what is it? You know, take it out of the one side of the ledger and put it in the other. I think that's one of the things they were looking at. And so they're still developing the kind of guts of what their building's going to look like. They've asked us for kind of technical, high-level technical ideation, I guess, of how the microgrid could fit into their system. And I just don't think that they're there yet in terms of finalizing their drawings or their what their facility is going to be.
Okay, and I think somebody said that people are willing to pay more for this, but aren't we charging less for it? Unless I missed it. I thought we're charging less for the power. Where's the pay more side coming out of maybe even a Sherwin-Williams? Where they, instead of paying a cent less for power, why wouldn't they be paying 3 or 4 or 5 cents more to have the uninterrupted guarantee and to take this off? This is responsibility of what I can only think that you don't build an R&D lab without having built the backup redundant power. There's no way in the world any of us can believe that that's not on somebody's, but I know they play real close to the vest as far as their finances, and I don't blame them, but there's no way in the world they haven't thought about that. They wouldn't have gone to this far down the line. So why aren't they paying more for the power?
So if they want truly 5.9 power, they probably will pay more for it. And so the models we're looking at, and Ali made these models, so you probably should answer this question, but I think to a large extent, we're relying on power coming from PJM that will be brought in to support these microgrids. And it's really only during islanding events that we have this 5.9 power issue. And so if the main grid goes down and we island off of the main grid, we still provide power during that event, however long that is. And so the question is how much extra is the cost to get that capability? And if our estimate is that there's only portions of their load that actually have to have that 5.9 capability, not their entire load. So we'd have to target the resilient portion of the batteries or microturbines or whatever it is we put in there that keeps up that uptime, has to be targeted specifically for the load that cannot go down. And those might be like the information systems or refrigerators and things like that are involved in what they're doing. But Ali, do you want to take a shot at how would you answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is one of the difficulties as we try to model these systems, is that we are doing this right now with kind of initial information. In the case of Sherwin-Williams, we've offered them a number of different options on how they might participate with the county utility, ranging from the county utility just being their supplier and including some renewable energy in that from the nearby landfill solar, down to the utility being the owner operator of not just their on-site backup equipment, but potentially producing thermal energy or specialty gases for them as well. What the utilities are really good at is they take a different approach to the long-term monetization of these assets than a traditional business. So these developers that come in are willing to take longer horizon looks for paybacks than a typical Fortune 50 company would do, because that's the business model that they're in, and that's the types of returns that they're expecting to get. So specifically, again, at Sherwin-Williams, we were targeting a slightly higher rate than we had targeted for the Arizona. I think we were targeting 11 cents a kilowatt hour. Part of that was to provide resiliency through new power lines to that site that would be underground. I'd love to see the study that said underground lines weren't as reliable as overhead, because underground is much more reliable. But the idea there would be that we would be charging them potentially more than they would be getting from potentially a First Energy contract, but that we'd be providing them, another 9 at least, and then the opportunity to do other things should they decide to pursue that in their design.
Is that just when, as Mayor Gallagher talked about, 5 days being down, if power was down 5 days, is that when they would be paying the higher rate for that period of time? Or are you talking about continually they pay a higher rate?
Yeah, they would continually pay the higher rate for that segment of the load that they wanted the higher uptime on. So, if 50% of their load needed that high level of uptime, the kilowatt hour rate for that 50% would be higher all the time than the other part.
Okay, all right. So that happens a lot with any utility. They charge based on your maximum, because they have to have that prepared and keep it ready for them for that piece of time. Will CPP and CEI be losing customer base as a result of this? I mean, not just the 1,000, if you ever hit the 1,000 target.
The idea is that we are creating new customers, so neither one are losing. That's the 1,000 customer idea. But, I did say 80% were coming from existing customers, so somebody has to lose those customers. So yeah, I think this is certainly a sore spot with First Energy. They're not going to be thrilled with the idea of losing customers, and but it's not going to be. I mean, our point is there will be a lot more customers coming as a result of this. The target here is that we want to create new industries and attract new businesses, not steal customers. But at least initially.
You just said 80% is coming from existing customers?
That was the model we used for downtown. And the reason we use that is because you need anchor tenants. You can't get somebody to commit to come and build the microgrid without long-term contracts with the end users. So Cleveland State, for instance, could be one of those downtown customers that enters into a long-term agreement to buy microgrid power. And so, to some extent, we need existing customers to do that.
So have you given CPP those numbers as far as how this translates to lost customer base and its impact on them, so they know if this goes in play that what to expect as far as lost revenue?
Right. Well, that's the major. I mean, they don't look at it from the standpoint of lost revenue, because they're not expecting to lose customers, and if they do, they'll be expected to be kept whole in that process. But that is that's going to be a major negotiating point for CPP in whatever we do. The final agreement we enter into with them going forward is that they want to be sure that if there's any customers that they lose, and by the way, they won't lose them as a distribution customer. They would only lose them as a generation customer. Yeah. So they have their take or pay contracts that they bring in electricity from, and those are delivered to their end users. That's what they would be losing. They would still have the distribution customer. But that's, you're right, that's a negotiation point.
When you're talking about the distribution that's going through their transmission lines, do they have to allow you to take power through their transmission lines? Is that by law? Ali or whoever, I have no idea. Or whether could they say, no, you have to string your own lines to your new customers?
We have to string our own lines for distribution lines. Transmission lines, though, are open access under federal law.
Okay.
Let me interrupt for a moment. We've been going for quite a time. We're going to hold this legislation because there are too many questions. There's still many more questions that just want to be
that's
asked.
great.
So what we're going to do is, if there are any other of our colleagues, we want to give them opportunity, because we do want to again end at about 5 o'clock.
I waited to the end to ask my question. That's why.
I appreciate you, Jack. You always ask good questions, but we want to get everyone in there. Are there any questions from any of our other colleagues?
Yes, Sweeney.
All right, Sweeney, go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I'll do 6 minutes or less, and I'll try to be very brief. I hate when people say I'll be very brief, because they never are, so I'll try to stay into that mode. Director Foley, we know it's a high priority for our county executive, and he gave you the leadership role on this to make this happen. And I'm a firm believer of the grid process and economic development, and it all about the end users, as that presenter just said. So I want to talk briefly about 3 points, and one of them just the legislation in and of itself, right? Because that's what was on the agenda. And all we're doing is modifying section 202.04. And there's about 4 underlines saying we're going to create a utility. Is that correct? Through the chair?
Oh. Yes. Yes. It's pretty simple language, giving the public Works Department the ability to create a public utility under the auspices of the Public Works Department.
Absolutely. On that language, when Director Dever was talking, he says, oh, we already have a public utility called sewers, and we're doing 43 municipalities. So I got a little discombobulated there, because we already have a utility for sewer. We want to create a utility that is all encompassing of all the utilities. And if we have the ability to use a utility under the existing codified ordinances, why do we have to do this one?
Now, if I could, Mr. Chairman, the department provides maintenance. We, under the sanitary agreements that we have with the municipalities. So there's 39 municipalities that we have sewer agreements to maintain their sewer lines in those communities. The sewer line is a utility. And so we take care of that utility for those respective cities.
I got it now, because when you said we have the utility, I just went down that path. It got me thinking in a different way. So thank you for that. And it seems like we're in a really big hurry to get this done, because we're at a committee of the whole. And it seems like it's a far way out, but it all starts with passing a piece of legislation so we can move forward. What we're talking about, Sherwin-Williams, do they have a backup plan for their building they're about to build? We're still 2 years out. So I don't think they're going to be in play at all. We're just trying to put something in place for whatever's available at the time when this becomes an active project. Is that correct? Through the chair?
Well, we're creating the vehicle to build the microgrids, and as Sherwin-Williams or anyone else builds out their facilities in 2 years, if we've got the authority to do this as a county, and we do an RFP for a developer, then that developer operator can play ball with Sherwin-Williams in the development of their facility out in Broadview Heights or wherever else someone else is building, or Brecksville, I'm sorry.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to get a handle on, we're moving fast with legislation, which is the first step. We have to. And I talked to my colleague, Councilwoman Simon, there's a lot of moving parts here. And to get it all together, some are farther out, some are near term. We're talking about letters of interest, letters of support, but no actual concrete end users, which this is all about. And I just want to help work with you and my colleagues to get this to fruition, but it seems to be a lot of maybes and ifs and that. And as we move forward with this, I know the council president's going to hold it, but this is going to be many years going. And I'd like to make a recommendation that we get updated as a council, or me individually, quarterly or biannually, just so we can keep our hands on this thing, because it's that important. And I'll shut up now, Mr. Chairman, because I still relinquish the floor for 2 minutes. And when we get back together, I might have some more questions. So thank you.
All right. Are
Councilman,
there any of our colleagues who have not yet asked a question that had an interest? If not, Mike, go right ahead.
well, yeah, Councilman, Council President, of course, we'll update you guys, the council, whenever you think we need to, or often, early and often. I just want to say the other part of it, it doesn't become real until we have the authority to do this, to answer Councilman Sweeney's question. So it is still kind of abstract because we don't have the legal authority to wield these powers yet. So once we've got that legal authority, once we start developing the RFPs, then we've got real customers out there and potential real developers.
Well, let me ask a follow-up question to Councilman Strawn's question. We're clearly now competing with CPP in the downtown area, and are we not?
No. No, we're going to cooperate with them. We would not compete with them. So the downtown microgrid is working in conjunction with CPP in the city of Cleveland. Yeah, I want to be really clear about that. We are not competing, we're working with them. It doesn't work in Cleveland. It really does not work in Cleveland unless we're working with the city of Cleveland and CPP on this project, on any project in Cleveland.
Okay. Would it be fair to say you would be competing with First Energy?
We will, yeah, probably.
Yeah. Do you have any need of First Energy's lines? Have you given any consideration to any potential lawsuits from them? Is that a possibility?
I mean, they can bid on the project. So when we do an RFP for a microgrid project, they can bid on it, right? And so they are able to, I guess, participate to the extent they feel they can provide 99.99%, uptime of power. In terms of the transmission lines, they own, so we got the transmission and distribution. We would not be using their distribution system. The transmission system, which is at the high level voltage, they own, but there's the federal rules that Andy talked about where there's open access rules into getting access into those into the transmission grid.
So they are required to provide that transmission access to you? Okay, all right. Well, again, we didn't have a lot of time. I did not hear costs regarding what it would take to build this, or have you prepared costs?
Yeah, I just remember, we would not build anything, right? So there's no construction or capital costs from the county. Those construction costs, capital costs are coming from the developer. And then the developer makes their money back by selling power under the county's auspices to customers.
Okay. All right. All right, well, thank you. Again, I know there'll be many more questions, and we still want to hold it, and we will reschedule again in the coming weeks. So at this time, if nothing else holds our attention, is there any miscellaneous business?
Nope.
And if nothing holds our attention, thank you to everyone. Our meeting is now adjourned.